everybody. It's early in the morning. I've got my bulletproof coffee. I might have some tired eyes going on, but it's not about my face. It's about my words. So, as you all know by this point, I love the excavation of all of this. I am absolutely and utterly obsessed with shining a light on all the deepest, darkest corners of our psyches. And I've been like that my whole life, right? I've got the seeker archetype and the detective archetype. But lately, it has really come from the place of seeing some of the messages in what we would normally call kind of like the spiritual or self-help community, and deeply disagreeing with them based on, right, as per usual, all the thousands and thousands of one-on-one sessions I've done, and the retreats and the workshops and the classes. So yes, groups also. But when I work with someone one-on-one, there's no bullshit. Okay? It's a very deep connection, and they tell me the actual truth about what's going on for them. And in a way that may not always come out in groups, depending on the group. And so when I hear something said in the spiritual community that directly contradicts what I've heard from person after person after person, or that actually does not seem to help, then I really have to question it. And today is one of those. So there is this idea out there that we should be almost like an island, like we shouldn't need romantic relationship or intimate relationships to be well, and that even when we're in those relationships, it almost feels like there's a shaming of wound happening. Now, again, as all of you know, I'm a huge fan of being accountable for our wounds. But I'm also a really big fan of expressing them honestly and being very real about it, because I believe and have seen many hundreds, thousands of times that the honesty about what's going on down there, in our psyches, is what starts to shed the light on it and free us up to have healthy relationships. So although I'm not only talking about romantic relationships, that is often where we see this stuff play out. And the reason for that is the intimacy factor. But of course, we can have intimacy with more than our romantic relationships. We can have intimacy with our closest friends, with our families, right? So we're going to talk about today coming into a relationship with a deficit, where you yourself, because always I'm included in this. You guys know I don't think I'm above any of this, right? That's the whole thing. We're doing this together. But where I use you, the word you to be more clear, where you're coming into a relationship at a deficit that has most likely, always, been there from childhood. And so the idea that I see in kind of the self-help community is that you just sort of keep that to yourself and deal with it on your own. And what I see that do is create weirdness. There's an offness there, and there's a lack of intimacy because not everything is being addressed and talked about. So we're going to go into this with the idea that we're going to be both very, very straightforward and honest and self-aware and accountable, right? But that we are going to communicate clearly with the people that are closest to us, particularly when your deficit is affecting the relationship. So my easiest way to talk about this is to get personal. And hey, to be fair, I told y'all right off the bat, if you're the type of person that doesn't want to get to know your life coach, I'm not the person for you, because I'm going to be vulnerable and I'm going to be honest about where I am and where I have been and what's so for me, in a way that you can then recognize what is so for you, not in a way to make it about myself. So one of my deficits that was from my childhood was not feeling like a priority. Okay? Not feeling, I'm the oldest of a bunch of kids, right? And in my childhood, particularly in my early childhood, my parents had a lot going on in their own lives. And my wellness was not necessarily a huge priority. Now, I definitely, in case my mom is watching, I was definitely a priority in a lot of ways as far as, being taught how to read and all the academic stuff and art. And so my learning and my knowledge, I definitely felt like was a priority. And so I don't have any issues around that. But as far as my emotional well-being, not so much. And this has super played out in my relationships. So in my past relationships, it would play out. And I want, for those of you who did not feel like a priority as a child to your parents, I want you to stick with me. If yours is slightly different, kind of think of yours. We'll keep going through some of these. But for those of you who have this same one, I'm curious if you recognize yourself in this conversation. So, and as I'm talking, I really think this may end up being a two-parter because this is a chunky conversation. This is there's a lot to this one. So let's call this part one. Okay, you weren't a priority growing up. So in my relationships in the past, what I did was I would actually choose men subconsciously, obviously. I'm not that much of an idiot to consciously do this, but subconsciously I would choose men to be in relationships with who I was also not a priority to them, right? So you've got that whole familiarity thing, that thing that's very familiar to your wound. And I did that for many years, and I just could not understand how I kept attracting the same kind of relationship into my life. Well, now, hindsight, I so understand that. And so here I come at the relationship with this huge deficit of, feeling, really even I would say being a priority for sure, but also not getting enough attention. And y'all, come on, I'm a Gemini and I'm a queen archetype. This girl needs a lot of attention. Just me being able to, the first time I was actually able to say those words out loud was only about 2 months ago. That I finally claimed that I need a lot of attention only 2 months ago. Now, some of y'all are out there laughing your asses off about that. And especially my Gideon is laughing because he knows, if anyone on this planet knows how much attention I need. But I was very ashamed of that. So keep in mind, we will often be very ashamed of our needs. And this comes from going without for so long and being at such a deficit, and most likely being shamed for needing it in the first place when we're children. Okay? Oh, you're demanding. You're an attention whore. Why does it always have to be about you? Right? I'm really, really curious. And as per usual, I wish you were all here giving me immediate feedback because I want to know which of my Coffee with Dawni listeners had the same experience. So many years of not being a priority and being very hurt over it. And it was kind of like one of my big lifelong pains, one of my big, I would say life themes. Okay. So then I get into relationship with my Mr. Gideon and he makes me this huge priority. I'm going to set this down, driving me nuts, trying to hold my coffee and talk with my hands. And everything kind of really starts to fall apart because first of all, I'm not used to it. So it's super unfamiliar. I don't trust it. I kind of start to sabotage it in a way. And here's where it gets really tricky. I hope you guys are hanging with this conversation because we're going into the depths. And because it's not something we normally talk about, we barely know how to not only speak it, use the language, but also we barely know how to hear it. So this is one of those conversations you may be getting tired and shutting me out. Do what you can to stay present with this. So one of the ways that we sabotage when we finally start to get that deficit met, okay, is that it's never enough. It's never enough. Now, sometimes this is easier to see outside of yourself. I saw this with my clients and friends a long time ago. If I have a client who feels like that they are never heard, and that's their childhood wound, is that they were not heard, it will not matter how much I hear them, how deeply I listen. First of all, these are often the clients that go way over their session times. Because even though they've said the same thing over and over and over, and I've heard them, they just don't feel heard. These are also the clients who will sometimes accuse me of not being a good listener. Because it's like there's not enough hearing in the world for them to get over that deficit. Okay? Totally understandable. I actually don't judge this because I get it. Because this is how I've been. I hope y'all are feeling super sorry for Gideon right now, because you should be if you're not. This is how I've been in this relationship with being made a priority. So it's almost like you start to sabotage by no matter how much you get it, it's never enough because you're making up for lost time. So think about this in a very physical manner. If you've gone for years not getting enough sleep, and then you finally start to sleep, it doesn't get better in a day or a week or maybe even a month. Your body is working at a deficit. If you have a deficit of vitamin D and you take a huge dose of that, you will still need, I take my D3s every single day, and it took me, because I was at such a deficit with that vitamin, it took me about 2 years to get my levels up. This is what we're talking about. It's the same concept. So because I went without it for so long, not only was it unfamiliar, but it wasn't working. There was almost this panic like, oh my gosh, I finally am a priority, and it's still not enough. Yeah, I can feel. So this is where my intuition starts to kick in, and I can feel who's going to be watching this, and I can feel some of you recognizing this pattern in yourself. Okay? It's a black hole of need. So you've probably dealt with this in yourself, and I guarantee you've dealt with this in people you've been in relationship with, whether it's your parent, your child, your best friend, or your romantic partner. Like, no matter how much you hear them, they never feel heard. No matter how much you give them, they never feel complete in some way. So then I think what we're going to do, because I am going to break this into 2 parts. I don't want to take up your whole morning with my face and my voice, okay? It only takes you so long to drink a cup of coffee. So what we're going to do, we're going to start part 1 with what the issue is, and then part 2, we're going to go into the solution. So before we end part 1, sorry, I have to have a little more of my coffee. Let's talk about what some of the other possibilities are. So not feeling like a priority and not feeling heard are 2 of them that we've addressed. And I've got a list in front of me, so I'm looking down at it for a minute. Okay, not getting enough acknowledgement and appreciation. Keep in mind, this is going to be as a child, right? Not feeling like you belong enough. Not feeling understood or seen, okay? And going without, having a huge deficit of affection, of touch as a child, and also not having enough stability and security. So I hope you all forgive me as I kind of leave you in this conversation. We're going to come back to it tomorrow. So what I want you to do before we come back tomorrow for Coffee with Dawni is I want you to be really looking at what is yours. What is your thing that you had such a huge deficit as a child that there's a good chance that it is still affecting your life. Maybe even to the point of subconsciously choosing certain partners for you that may not be the best matches, and or sabotaging you if you have found a partner or people in your life, a best friend who gives this to you, but you're sabotaging because it's never enough, or that you don't trust it, you're suspicious of it. Can you see how pretending like this doesn't exist or trying to just deal with it secretly on your own, heaven forbid the people closest to you just are able to have this conversation, right? You think you're hiding it, but you all are not hiding it. It's not being hidden. It just creates weirdness and tension because they don't think that you know that you have this, and maybe you're not consciously aware, which is the whole point of this conversation. We're going to bring it up. We're going to bring the subconscious to the conscious in this way. So basically, the gist of this is, what is your childhood deficit? And where is it currently affecting you? Okay? In a way that we are going to now finally look at the ways to get this met and healed. So that's your homework for today. Do it before tomorrow's coffee with Dawni so that you know at least, and if you've got a couple of these, then own that. Okay? So what if we're needy? Guess what? At least we're finally telling the truth about it. Do you think us not admitting that we're needy makes us less needy? No, it makes us more needy because then we get weird. So we're just going to own that we're all needy bastards, okay? Including me, 100%. Attention whore right here. Attention whore right here. I'm going to own that shit so that something can be done about it. And at the very least, we're telling the truth. And the truth shall set you free, bitches. Okay. You looking forward to part 2? Do your homework. Figure out what your main one is. And if you've got a couple, write those down. I love you, needy bitches. May your coffee be strong and your life be blessed. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please like and subscribe. It really helps out my channel. And if you would be interested in working with me further, you can check out DawniAngel.com. I would love to come speak to your group, come to your business to do a training, be on your podcast, my personal favorite, or even work with you one-on-one.